Tonight on Let It Rip, what do President Biden, former President Trump, and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis all have in common? Politically speaking, not much, but they're all going for the same prize, the White House. So does DeSantis entering the race make the GOP more competitive? Or are we set for a rematch of 2020 no matter what? But first,
students leave with debt, like a lot of debt, and I think that affects if you're going to a certain job, it's going to make it a lot harder to save that money.
The 87% who don't have student loan debt are going to pay for it.
A Supreme Court decision on Biden's student loan relief plan could come any day. But with a conservative court, do borrowers stand a chance at seeing that help? The debate starts now. And so time now to Let It Rip. President Biden's student loan forgiveness plan with Congresswoman Debbie Dingell and former Congressman here, Mike Bishop. Good to see you both. Thank you for joining us. We got both ends of the political spectrum here, but an interesting debate about the student loan issue here. You have the Supreme Court later on this month that will decide whether or not this president has the power to continue some of this forgiveness program. But let's talk about the forgiveness program itself. Congresswoman Dingell, this president is saying, hey, $10,000 relief for those who make $125,000 or less, and an additional $10,000 for those who perhaps are on a Pell Grant. Do you think that's too kind, too much?
For families that have an income of $75,000 or less, to really get into the details. I think that student loan debt is destroying families. It's become a staggering cost, and it was a way to try to help stimulate the economy, to help young people, not so young people anymore, quite frankly. People are middle-aged and still paying off staggering loan debt, and it was a way that he is trying to help the economy and to help working men and women across this country that are struggling.
Mike Bishop, there's two issues here. I think we talked earlier. You said one is about whether or not this president should be able to do this. The Supreme Court will decide on that. But should he be able to do this? Do you have an objection to continuing the forgiveness of these student loans?
Well, first of all, I agree with Congresswoman Dingell on the reasons. I don't disagree, but what I do disagree with is that this is, in my opinion, and I think the justices will affirm this, that it is unconstitutional.
I know. I'm learning the Supreme Court.
It's unconstitutional. It's not a Republican Democrat issue. It's right in the Constitution. We are a constitutional republic, and our Constitution specifically lays out the roles of both the legislative branch and the executive branch. And in this case, you have a member of the executive branch. And it's not just President Biden. This has happened before. Presidents have always tried to undercut the role of Congress. But Article 1 of the Constitution lays out specifically what the role of Congress is, and that is to legislate, to pass laws, and to appropriate funds. Those two things are important in this decision, and I think the Supreme Court's going to come back and say, President Biden, no matter what your reasoning was, you can't do that.
But you say despite what the reason is, but President Trump, former President Trump, is the one who started this program because there was a need for it at the time. And this president is arguing that that need continues. In fact, in many ways, it could be worse. People's mental health situations are worse. People's family situations are worse. Do you see why there's a need for this?
You mean the pause in the student loan?
There's two different issues here.
Right. Well, right. But I'm saying, do you understand the need for the pause?
We all, I think, can understand the circumstances involved, especially with COVID and all this country has been through. And I think decisions were made based on that. But in the end, I don't think the decisions were made based on good public policy. These were political decisions by, pardon the word, but politicians who made certain decisions based on what politically they might get the millennials in this state, in this country now, are going to canonize President Biden for all that he has done for them, to give back to them, and that's what he wanted to.
But Mike, 20 million people with student loan debt live in Republican districts. Republicans are sitting back saying, wait a minute here. I mean, you could be hurting the very people you're trying to get the vote from.
So I got my lawyer hat on now. I'm just not being a politician, not thinking Republican or Democrat. I look directly, as a constitutional republic should, at the Constitution itself. And I need only go to Article 1 of the Constitution that specifically lays out what the role of Congress is. And then you go to Article 2 and you look specifically at the role of the executive is. And this is a blatant, bald-faced power grab by the executive branch. No offense.
Congresswoman, what do you think when you hear that? I mean, do you think this president is pushing the envelope too far?
I think just for the viewers, we need to talk about two different actions. Because in the agreement, so starting with President Trump and President Biden, they put a pause on student loan payments. Now, with regard to that, in the agreement that was reached in the deficit ceiling, Biden and McCarthy agreed that 60 days after the June 30th, I think it is, which is August 29th, student loan payments will start again. The Senate voted today separately to rescind, this is very confusing because it's two different issues, the student loan forgiveness of up to $20,000.
But there's two issues. One is the pause, which is because of COVID.
Which has already been
and that's already been
agreed
taken care of.
Which was done by executive order.
No, that's done, but we're talking about the forgiveness that this president wants to continue beyond the pause, and that forgiveness would give up to $25,000, right?
It was voted on in the House last week, it was voted on in the Senate today, and the president has said that he will veto it. So it is in the legislative branch of government.
But Congresswoman, do you think this burdens taxpayers unfairly? Some who didn't go to college at all, others who already paid their fair share of their student loans and struggled to do so. Do you see how they think this is unfair?
There is clearly, that is part of the discussion. And I think we've got what we need to do, not in a Republican or Democratic way, but as a country need to be making education more affordable instead of less affordable. And the staggering student debt that our generations have been graduating with and is increasing, nobody can afford. How much is it to go to law school now? How much is it to go to medical school? And we need to incentivize more people going into. We don't maybe need more lawyers, but I love you. But we don't have enough doctors and dentists now.
But Mike, a lifelong burden on low and middle income Americans. Some people are saying that some of these Republicans who are saying this is too much and it's charity and this isn't right, they're saying they're out of touch with what everyday Americans are dealing with. Do you think that may be close to the truth?
That's pretty much what Americans think about members of elected government, that they're out of touch and not in tune. And I think the solution that was created was a political solution. If we're going to address the problem, and I think it was correctly stated by Congressman Dingell, and that is that we have skyrocketing, escalating tuition costs. If that is a problem, then we should be addressing the problem and not fanning the flames of the symptoms. And that's what this does. It makes the cost of tuition go up even faster, because once colleges figure out that there's someone there to pay for their tuition increase, they'll continue to do it. And just because if this president gets away with this time, future presidents are going to forgive debt in the future. And it's going to happen, and we're not solving the problem. These schools, these institutions of higher education have got to come to the table and figure out how they bring the cost of tuition down.
The people who are affected the most are college students themselves. We went out today and talked with some college students about their thoughts, and they wanted you to hear them.
I want to hear them.
Coming from me being a junior, I've been in school for about 4 or 5 years now. I mean, taking some time off here and there. So my student debt's pretty high. I think that the student debt forgiveness is a really good thing. It'll get people out of school quicker. It'll lower the debt that everybody has. And I think that it'll be a good thing for our society as a whole.
As a lot of students leave with debt, like a lot of debt, and I think that affects, like, you know, if you're going into a certain job, it's going to make it a lot harder to save up that money, and it just makes life harder.
It's very intimidating, the money. I mean, knowing that you're going to have to pay it off, people just, sway away from it, because living as it is already really hard, especially being, a young person in their 20s and their 30s. I mean, it's hard for everybody, but up and coming now, it's very difficult, and people just want to sway away from anything that they can that'll save them some money.
Mike, those are people who actually have food on the table and a roof over their head who are saying this. We talk about an even playing field. When you are unable to pay or even engage with a university at all and apply for a grant or a student loan because you don't believe that you can pay this off, doesn't that stop people from an equal opportunity to get an education?
There's no question. I mean, that goes without saying. It is not, however, the issue. The issue is the cost of higher education. And if we really want to address this problem, we got to stop giving away money, because that's just going to drive up the cost. It's going to drive up inflation. Across the board, it's a bad idea. It's bad public policy. If you want to solve the problem, you got to go to the root, and that is the cost of education. And the cost of education is a result of a bloated infrastructure inside the higher education.
But coming off of a pandemic that we just came off so soon after, when people are so burdened by so much, wouldn't this be the time to not address that bigger issue, but rather give them the relief they need?
Well, how about this, Rube? How about all the people that didn't go to college? How about all the people that paid their student loans? How about all the people that have already that paid it as they went? All of those Americans, those hardworking Americans that have done that in good faith, it is patently offensive to me to think that those people would have to bear the burden of that cost for something that they, in good faith, have already done themselves, and it just is not fair. How about all those people that didn't go to college? And there only 40% of Americans go to college.
Congresswoman, I wanted to ask you about this. Even Joe Manchin, of course, a moderate Democrat, said, look, there are 50 existing student loan programs to help people if they can't pay. And by doing this, the president is literally minimizing and making those useless. What about those other programs that are out there? Shouldn't people be looking at those?
Well, I think people have been looking at those, and I think student debt is one of college debt is one of the biggest problems we have in this country. And I think the president is trying to find a solution of something that has been stagnating the economy. And no matter what, I do believe those student loan repayments are going to start at the end of the summer. People are not prepared for them. We already have economists saying that there's going to be a dramatic impact on the economy, that people are going to be going into poverty or not making the payments.
But what about the taxpayers who are already having to worry about carrying the burden for everybody else?
I think that that's a fair question, and I think we're trying to address a crisis in the moment, but that our real job is what Mike and I agree on, which is to address the cost.
Is that going to be talked about?
I think we all have to, and we will keep talking about it, and I think people need to make it a priority. But I'll tell you one more thing as we come to a close. Not everybody needs to get a university degree. I can live without more, I don't want to say lawyers, but imagine living without an electrician or a plumber. We need more of them, and they can make six figures. They can make six figures.
They can make money while they're on the job as apprentices, and that's a kind of a big deal.
We should be supporting and looking at more of that.
And we need to also, as a society, respect those jobs as much as we do anything else.
We can't live without them.
Of course not. They're the backbone of so much of society. Congresswoman Debbie Dingell, good to see you. Mike Bishop, what a pleasure. Thank you. Come back again and see us on Let It Rip. Still ahead, it's news that surprised nobody, but immediately gave former President Trump his biggest rival for the Republican nomination. But does Florida Governor Ron DeSantis actually stand a chance at taking down the Donald? That debate rolls on next. Back now on Let It Rip, talking the 2024 election, which is getting more crowded on the Republican side. GOP strategist Jamie Rowe is joining the debate, and of course, Congresswoman Debbie Dingell is with us as well. Good to see both of you. I want to begin with the Congresswoman. It's an interesting, if you look at a congressperson's itinerary, why aren't you at Mackinac? It's because you were in Washington. The reason you were in Washington is the debt ceiling. Give everybody an update. What happened?
Well, I'm going to say this about it. It was not a great process. I felt like we were being held hostage. America has to pay its bills. We could not default on the debt ceiling. Nobody's happy. Compromise is not a dirty word, so if nobody's happy, we're probably at the right place, and all but one of the Michigan delegation voted for it, Republicans and Democrats.
Let's talk about this president who, of course, sat down with Speaker McCarthy and came up with a solution together. The two of them, as you say, both not exactly thrilled, but moving forward here, who is it that you think can take on President Joe Biden and win, Donald Trump or Ron DeSantis?
I never underestimate Donald Trump. I've said that to people. His popularity remains strong. He's got a base in this state and in this country that is strong, and I think he is a formidable candidate.
When people first talked about Ron DeSantis, Jamie Rowe, they were singing his praises months ago, saying it's going to be incredible. This is our answer. There are people who are disappointed in former President Trump after the insurrection. They were saying, I need a new guy. They found him. Do you think he's actually meeting, the expectation with all this praise?
Yeah, I think the expectations were really high for Governor DeSantis coming in, particularly after a 20-point win in his race for re-election in Florida last fall, when Republicans across the country had problems. Governor DeSantis freight trained his way through Florida. So I would not underestimate Ron DeSantis as well, at all. I think one thing we have right now are a lot of people running. And I think that one thing that they see is weakness in our current president. We saw it today, unfortunately, when he took another tumble at the Air Force Academy graduation, which is difficult to watch, quite frankly.
But Jamie, aren't we seeing a difficulty? Aren't we seeing a weakness with Donald Trump? Isn't that why the gates are open and other people are walking in? I mean, if Donald Trump was really as undefeatable and as invincible as everyone first thought, why would someone like Ron DeSantis put his political career on the line for this?
Because they think they have better answers for the problems that are facing America. I think Governor DeSantis believes that. I think Vivek Ramaswamy was a candidate I think a great deal of, who's a brilliantly smart man with great solutions to our problems that he's offering up. I think Ambassador Nikki Haley has great ideas. I think former Vice President Mike Pence has great ideas. I think they're running because they think they have something to offer to America, not because of how they feel about Donald Trump. It's how they feel about America.
Congresswoman, when you see this gentleman over here, Vivek Ramaswamy, he's made stops in Metro Detroit. His ideas are popular, but people are questioning whether or not someone who's just coming out of as an entrepreneur can just become the president. But you don't put anything past anybody. You saw Donald Trump years ago, and you predicted that he would do better than he did.
I have still said to everybody, do not underestimate Donald Trump. I think that he's got a strong base. I think you're going to have a lot of Republican candidates. And actually, a lot of the candidates that are running are friends on the Republican side. Actually, Ron DeSantis is the person that I don't like what he's doing, the hate that he's spreading in Florida, the banning of books, the banning of courses in just American history, taking on Disney. It is somebody that I really do have problems with.
You worked with Ron DeSantis in 2013 for a short time in Congress.
I was not there yet. I mean, I certainly knew who he was, and John worked with him, but I have not worked with him. But I don't like what I've seen in Florida. It sort of dismays me.
Is he further right than he was when he was in Congress?
I think he's getting more attention and able to take more action. So his I don't even know the word I would use to call it conservatism. I really don't think you can ban history the way that he is, ban African American classes, or I just think that's wrong.
Jamie Rowe, even Donald Trump himself said the way Ron DeSantis handled Disney is just bad business in general. Do you think Ron DeSantis is trying too hard to get to the extreme right base and in the process is alienating everybody?
I think Ron DeSantis has firm beliefs on issues that he cares about, and he acts on them. And as far as Florida goes, it's one of the fastest growing states in the country. It survived COVID economically almost better than any place else in the country, largely due to his leadership. People aren't leaving Florida. People are going to Florida. There may be some who are leaving, but a heck of a lot more are going because they like what they see, what's happening.
You have to impress more than people who like the idea of Florida. You have to impress all of Middle America, and you have to impress people who may be disenchanted with Donald Trump, but are sitting back saying, this guy may not be my cup of tea. I don't know how much further right he's going to go. Do you think that's a concern, that he's too extreme?
Yeah, first of all, I don't think what he's done has been fairly explained in the media, like the Don't Say Gay law. 3 words that don't appear in any of that legislation are "don't say gay." Those are nowhere in that legislation. What they don't want to do is sexualize children in public schools, which I personally, as a parent, I agree with completely. We should not be doing that in our public schools. So and after he did it, he got reelected by 20 points in a swing state like Florida. So I think that the people of Florida like what he's doing, and I think the people in the Republican Party are going to like it as well. Or at least it's good to have his voice as a part of the debate. And I think that we're going to have a very strong debate on our side.
It's going to be a tough fight, though, against someone who can say, look, whether you like it or not, this president, the former president, talked about drilling the wall and getting criminals out of the country that have been allowed to come in safely. He just tweeted that earlier today or on social media.
So after he stopped drilling, stopped building the wall, and has had more illegal aliens come across the border than any president in American history, he can tweet all he wants. Actions speak a heck of a lot louder than tweets, that's for sure.
Well, I'm talking about the former President Trump, talking about drilling, talking about the wall. No, the former president talked about drilling the wall and getting criminals out, and he's saying that he's the guy to do that. And it looks as though former President Trump is leaning further and further towards the center or left, wouldn't you say, Congresswoman Dingell?
Well, there's no question that he has been trying to moderate how people are looking at them. I do think that the Republican primary is going to be a fascinating primary because it isn't going to be a two-person race. It is going to be a 5, 6, or 7-person race, which, by the way, dilutes Donald Trump's base is strong, and then you've got everybody else breaking it up.
Why is it that former Vice President Pence is not doing as well as perhaps he should, given the fact that he's a man of his word, a guy who's done everything that he should have done, played by the book, and at the end of the day, ending up with minuscule polling numbers?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and we'll see. I think that there are a whole lot of people that are hardcore Trump supporters that may have issues with some of the actions of Vice President Pence.
Do you have an issue with the actions of former Vice President Pence?
I don't. I think he's an honorable man who has given very much to both the state of Indiana and to our country. I think his voice is a good one to add to the choir here as we get into this campaign. And one thing I think right now, and all the polling shows President Trump with a huge lead in the primary. I think the debates are going to matter. And one thing different you're going to see on our side of the aisle is we're going to have debates on the Republican side. President Biden faces opposition too from Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who is doing surprisingly well, as far as I'm concerned, in the polling, but he will not share a debate stage with Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and I just wonder why not? Why does President Biden not want to give voters on the Democrat side the same option that we're giving them on the Republican side?
Congresswoman Dingell, you've known the President Biden for a long time. Are you concerned at all about his mental acuity and his ability to stand on stage and take on opponents?
So I want to say this to you. Whenever I'm with Joe Biden, he is. I went to Ireland with him a month ago. He is focused. He knows what the issues are. You know, the fall today was, I get it. Do you know how many times I fall in the Capitol on those marble steps and I'm finally beginning to move to flat shoes? I've probably fallen 10 times. I don't have a camera on me 24 hours a day, and I'm not, so we all have these, you know.
But beyond the physical and the age, just mental acuity, the fact
his mental acuity, I can tell you, the conversations I've had, the intense discussions that I've had, we have disagreements at times, we are very focused, we laugh. His mental acuity is 100%
But Congresswoman,
there.
in the press room, there is a lot of talk with our colleagues at the national level who'll say, how come this president doesn't show up like former President Trump did inside of that press room, instead sending his press secretary on a daily basis? He needs to show up more in front of the press. Do you think that's an issue?
We can go back and look at the history of different presidents, and different presidents did different things. Donald Trump loved the camera. And Joe Biden does make himself available to the press. He talks to them, not as much as everybody would like, but I can look, I had my arms broken as we were talking about this whole debt ceiling, and what had happened is the deal was cut, and he focuses when I bring up different issues. The one thing I can tell you, his mental acuity is there.
Former President Donald Trump and President Biden show up on a debate stage. What happens, Jamie?
Fireworks are going to happen, is my guess. I think President Biden is going to be held to account for his record. And if you look at the polling that I saw today, I think he had a 42% job approval rating, and 21% of the people in America think the country's on the right track. President Biden his record is not being embraced by the American people. He lost control of the House of Representatives last year, and I think he's going to have a tough time.
But you support DeSantis, but at the same time, do you think DeSantis, do you think President Biden can actually, speaking of mental acuity, I'm 47, what's going on here? But if you really take a look at President Biden and DeSantis, and then you look at Trump, who has a better chance against Biden?
Personally, I think that Governor DeSantis would have a better chance against President Biden. And the biggest reason is I think that we need some generational change in our leadership, particularly at the executive level in this country. And I think that there are a whole bunch of younger voters out there who simply don't identify with two octogenarian candidates. I think that we are far better served as a country if we look to the future, and I think that we need somebody, we need a new generation to step forward and lead this country.
I want to give you an opportunity, Congresswoman Dingell, to wrap this up when we come back with final thoughts after this. Final thoughts on the upcoming election? I know it's still more than a year out, but Congresswoman Dingell.
It's a year out. I don't believe any poll. I told all of you Donald Trump was going to win Michigan. None of you believed me because of the polls. Polling doesn't mean a thing.
We do have the video that she did say that many years ago.
As a political operative, I'm going to 100% agree with you. Don't pay attention to the polls. Pay attention to the message that the candidates are bringing to the table. And Detroit, go to the Grand Prix this weekend. And happy graduation to my daughter Mia, who's graduating from Lutheran High North on Sunday.
No one's going to argue with you there. Jamie Rowe, good to see you. Thanks for joining us. Congresswoman Dingell, as usual, good to see you. That does it for this edition of Let It Rip.